Hello out there, sports fans. Welcome to our podcast today. This is Coach Eric Johnson, the brand.
This is Coach Aaron, the source. Good morning, EJ.
Good morning, Mr. Aaron. What's on the docket today, my friend?
Well, we've got a subject that actually is a spinoff of a topic we just talked about. And the reason why it came about was I was talking to one of our listeners, and Jason Matthews, I'm sorry. And I was just pulling up the podcast. And we did a podcast called Intelligent Training. And Jason had mentioned he liked it. And he had talked about the aspect of 1,000 swings to get better, and how we kind of broke that down and said, hey, well, if 700 of those swings are good and 300 are crap, and you finish with those last 300, what good has 1,000 swings done you? And so it kind of got me thinking, because that whole beast mode, Mamba mentality thing, we kind of had a conversation about that, how people are really misled by these snippets of information that we get from these professional athletes or from even scientists that don't provide a whole lot of context. And so people just are real formulaic in how they want to go about their success, and they don't understand all the other external factors and how you have to set up the optimal environment for actually those 1,000 swings or 500 swings or whatever it is you're doing to really take effect. And then it got me thinking, later that night, about, the saying, if you do something for 10,000 hours, it'll make you an expert.
Right.
And so that's the kind of what I wanted to talk about, however long it takes us to get through this. But so the title for this podcast is 10,000 hours. It depends.
Right.
And the reason why I say that is, again, I was just kind of ruminating on it, thinking about it. And it came to me that everyone thinks, okay, well, if I do this number of times, I'm going to be an expert. If I do this number of times, I'm going to know how to throw a curve, or this number of times, my shot is going to be, my free throw shot is going to be better. And I just think there's more to it than just the number.
Right.
And because everyone kind of wants that whole magic formula, magic beans, all those things, that's kind of what they key in on, but they don't key in on the context in which you're doing that stuff. And that's why, I always put that disclaimer in there in terms of it depends.
Right.
And there's things outside of the number that you have to look at when you're training an athlete. It's creating the right environment. It's going through the right scenarios. It's all of those things that lead you to, again, not being an expert, but actually in sports, it's about mastery.
Right.
Because to me, when I use the word mastery, I'm thinking of mastery denotes the ability to call upon a skill on command. And in sports, that's performance.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what, where I'm going with this. And just to use, again, I like my analogies, but I was just thinking, okay, there's a lot of things I'm almost 60 years old. So I've got 10,000 hours in on a lot of stuff.
Right.
And there's a lot of things I definitely haven't mastered. There's more that I haven't mastered than I have mastered. And so I was thinking, okay, what's something that I know I've got 10,000 hours in that I do daily that I probably should be a lot better at that I'm not?
Okay.
And that's typing on a keyboard. And I can honestly say I started typing in high school. So we're talking
Wow.
40 something odd years, I've been typing on some kind of keyboard, whether it was the regular
Typewriter.
typewriter, that's what we had to use in high school to do our reports, or now a keyboard. And I can honestly tell you, because I remember when I first started learning how to type, you're supposed to memorize the keys and stuff, right?
Right.
I was not big on wanting to type. And back then I didn't have to type a lot. So I kind of half-assed remembered, the keyboard.
Right.
Well, fast forward 2024, I'm 59 years old. I'm not any better typist than I was when I was 15 years old.
Right.
And here's why. I did the task, right? And I did it regularly. So I've got 10,000 hours.
Right.
But I didn't have the right mindset. I didn't create the right environment. And I didn't apply myself to learn the skill. Because if you think about it, now I should be typing, 50, 60, 70 words a minute. I'm probably still at the same 30.
You're better than me.
With a lot of mistakes than I was 30 something odd years ago.
Right.
And so that's my analogy to kind of illustrate the point that it's not just time in. It's not just hitting this number.
Right.
But it's the path you take to hit that number.
I'm with you on that, man. I hear you loud and clear on that.
That's my opening salvo on this subject.
It's a good one, man. It really is. I always look at it this way: hard work versus work smarter. And you've got hard work, and you just put your head down and you just working.
Right.
Versus work smarter, you have a plan. And you said a key word in your opening statement here is, environment, having the right environment to work in, and understanding that plan, and putting that smart work. I always say this too, Aaron, is we always have clients that say, "Hey, work these guys out hard, make them sweat," right? And we laugh at each other. And I always say, hey, efficient energy, time management.
I like that.
I always say that, that's what we want, because that leads to performance that is there. A lot of times when people just kind of just do that mama mentality and work really hard and they're grunting and everything like that. And I think the mindset with that is there really a thought process of understanding the skill they're trying to learn? Or is it just grunting through this, I've got to get this done. I'm grunting through it. Oh yeah, that's making me tough. And maybe you're going about the wrong way while you're grunting through it or working hard. Maybe you're spending too much energy and not really doing it properly. And I see that versus the person who is saying, let me stop, let me adjust, let me understand what I'm doing. Now, how do I make it better? That's the two sides of it. And I think that gets lost in translation in the general public who has an athlete, and they take that young athlete, whether it's a youth player or a high school player or even a player that goes to college. And I see this in college too, that just work hard, just grunt it out. I see the videos of guys, I've got my my squat or my clean and jerk, and I PR'd it. Well, how is that relative to the game of baseball? And you're getting stronger, but is it helping you feel the ground ball better?
Right.
Is it helping you throw the ball harder? If I'm just maxing out one max and that max did it for me, well, what if I just max out on one pitch in a game? That there's no pitchability there. What about the other 27 outs you needed to get? Right. You see what I'm thinking? I'm just like laughing, going, well, I don't quite understand that. So that's kind of like my 2 cents on it to start off.
Yeah, well, you said something that struck a chord with me, and it's funny because You said the thought process of understanding the skill you're trying to learn. And to me, that speaks to scenario.
Right.
And the reason why this is so timely is last night I had finished up. I came in, you were in a lesson, and so I always sit in on lessons because sometimes it's kids that I work with as well, and I kind of want to see how their body's moving and how you want it to move and stuff.
Right.
And so I sat there on the bucket for a few minutes, and it was really interesting because I was probably sat there about 7-8 minutes. All of that time, the kid never swung the bat. And all you talked about was the scenarios and situations, and you were quizzing them. What are you going to do? Okay, now it's a 0-2 count. What pitch are you looking for? Okay, where are you going to try and place the ball? What are you going to do if he does this? What are you going to do if he does that? Then you went to a different scenario. Okay, now it's 2-1, and you just fouled off a fastball, and it was up and behind you.
Right.
What do you think is going to happen next? See, so what's happening is you're going through all of those scenarios, and they have nothing to do with the physical.
Right.
I'm very big on what I call experiential learning. In other words, you learn through going through the experience of things.
Right.
That's how it gets baked in and grasped. And a lot of people don't understand it sometimes, because when I have an athlete, for instance, and they come in the gym and it's their first day, most of the time I don't do anything for them. I make them do it themselves. I make them set up a piece of equipment. I make them break down a piece of equipment. And what I'm trying to do is ingrain the experience of doing it into the learning. So that way it's easier for them to recall it the next time they have to go and do it without my direction.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Sure does.
And that's what you were doing. You're going through these scenarios or these experiences, and the kid has to actually sit there and think about and give you an answer of, what do I do? Versus, okay, I'm gonna put a bunch of balls through the machine.
Right.
Hit a curve, hit a curve, hit a curve. Hit a fastball, hit a fastball, hit a fastball. Hit a slider, hit a slider, hit a slider. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's that 10,000. It goes back to that $10,000 swing mentality thing, right?
10,000 swing or 10,000 hours. How are those hours spent doing what you're talking about? Is a part of that 10,000 hours incorporating that into the learning environment, or is it all swing, 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 hit the ball, hit the ball, hit the ball, hit the ball?
Yeah.
And so I really like that, and I thought about that because, and I'll finish with one point, because I don't even call track practice. I call it rehearsal, because I want them in the mindset of thinking about what we're doing is rehearsal for what we need to perform. And that goes back to your other point about, well, you didn't use the word, but how do you transition these action skills into performance? And there's got to be some kind of activity that bridges that.
Right.
And the mental aspect of what you're doing with the athlete is your way of bridging the physical aspect of hitting with the situational aspect of the game, which now translates into performance.
Yeah. Can we call it this, Aaron? I think, part of this mama mentality or hard work or sweating extra 10,000 hours, that's just part of the equation. The other side, the mental side, the planning, the preparation, the rehearsal, you said, and then taking it to a game or a track meet, an event or whatever, that gets lost with a lot of athletes out there. And I think it's lost general public in thinking that just because you work hard, good things are going to happen. I think that's I think it's just a really different term for me. Like, oh, you work hard, good things are going to happen. Well, not if you don't have a plan, not if you're not applying yourself the right way and adjusting. Working hard is great. And there has to be that in this, but you need to adjust and understand what you're doing and to find the answer. You couldn't have said it any better. You're trying to master the skill. And I think mastering a sport or an event or whatever you're doing requires planning, preparation, evaluation of what you're thinking, having that inner peace with yourself. There's so many just things that go into completing an athlete and mastering the skill of a sport that gets lost in this translation. And it goes back to our topic. 10,000 hours, it depends, right? It depends on many factors that people tend, and I think majority of people tend to overlook, and that's why they have trouble mastering it. It's like, I don't understand. I did all this work with you, and what's going on? You know, I hear that and I go, well, have you done these things that we talked about in our mastery program? You know, or hitting, fielding, etc., pitching. Have you done these things that we talked about? Have you written them down? Have you studied what we talked about? I see a lot of athletes, Aaron, that come to us that maybe they don't write down everything we talk about. You know, we may send, clips and stuff to them, and maybe they don't sit down and really evaluate what we're really saying to them well enough to master the craft. And I think that goes a long way. I think people are in such a hurry these days, Aaron, to get it fast. I need it now. I've got to do it now. There's no time. I have no time. I got to rush. And in order to master something or get better at something, you must study it and you must ingrain it inside your soul to understand what you're doing to perfect it. And I think people don't have the time to do that these days, it seems like. My opinion.
No, I agree. The term I use is, the training's got to be baked in. And
say that.
And I always have to use that term with athletes who get to a point in training where when it gets boring. And it's like, well, I've been doing this exercise for 8 sessions now, and can I move on to something else? I'm like, no. I said, one, you've learned how to do it, but you've got to master it. And you've got to be able to do it on command. And you got to know which scenarios to use it, when not to be able to use it, and all of those sorts of things. And that's what I call baking it in. You got to give things time to just really get in deep into your muscle memory, into your training IQ, into all of these things, so that your brain can call upon it and your body can react instantly.
Right.
It's not like, recall that you have to have. And just because you can do something doesn't mean you've mastered it.
Yeah. It's really funny. And I think about our performances as we get into our mastery years. The events that we do, whether I'm out playing golf or you're running track and doing that stuff at our mastery level. And we can recall stuff very well. And I think you and I have that ability because, we've done so many things so consistently right that we can recall it faster because we've studied it and we understand it, whether we're teaching or training an athlete or whether we're going out performing in an event ourselves at our age. And I think a lot of people out there, adults, youth athletes, professional athletes, mastering what you're trying to do takes not only hard work, but it takes a plan, It takes the ability to adjust, and the ability. I think a lot of people are afraid to fail, Aaron. This leads to these hours too, that when you don't do something right, it's not a bad thing. It just allows you to, grab yourself and say, hey, what do I need to do better to make what I'm doing consistent, and I can perform at a certain level. So, that's what I think today. I think these are things that people need to really consider when they're trying to put those hours in and do it the right way.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to look at a bar graph, right? You've got axis here and axis here. Most people aren't going to experience success 0 to 100 in a straight line, straight up, in
right
at a time. Most aren't going to see a diagonal line straight up to success over time. Most of us are going to see a zigzag.
Right. Right.
Hopefully over time.
Right.
You've got to understand that the process is always going to be filled with setbacks and step backs and redirects and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But that's what you want. You want more time where you're doing things right than when you're doing things wrong over that spectrum.
Right.
And the accumulation of those instances is what's going to lead to the mastery, the performance, the expertise, all of those sorts of things. Yeah. But I have nothing else to add to this. I don't want to make this podcast 10,000 hours. So,
hey, well said today, Aaron. And that kind of ends what we want to talk about today. But glad that people could listen to what we have to say out there. And if you have any opinions, please let us know. This is Coach EJ, the brand.
It's Coach Aaron, the source. We'll see you.